Hey guys, Ginger here. Welcome back to my channel, and today I am finally bringing you guys both my January and February wrap-ups. Honestly thought that I only read about like 10 books in between the 2 months, but the more I thought about it and actually investigated, I realized I've read 13 books over the past 2 months, which is much better than I thought I did. A couple of these books were audiobooks, so that's why I kind of forgot. And I also forgot when I read each book. So, yeah, that's how it goes. So, yes, like I said, I am wrapping up both January and February because I ended up not doing a wrap-up for January because just everything that was going on, I was not feeling in the right headspace to film a wrap-up. So, I have it with me here. And since there are 13 books to talk about, I feel like this might be a little long, but that's fine. Talking about books is why you're here, I'm assuming. Yeah. So, without further ado, we're going to start with January, and I read 4 books in January. So, we're going to start with that. So, the first book that I read in 2020 and for January was an ARC that I had received, which I was really excited about, and that was The God Game by Danny Tobey. I would probably explain this as a Ready Player One meets a dark matter type of thriller. There is a lot of science, engineering type of ideas in here, but it also deals with augmented reality, which is a video game type of thing. And it's been a minute since I read this, but the whole idea is that the main characters end up participating in this game called the God Game, and they have to find out things and do stuff for this God character in order to win the game. If not, they die in real life. And at the time, I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was a pretty good book. It was fast-paced. The first couple chapters were a little slow, but after that, it got really fast-paced. I thought the characters were a pretty unique, maybe not unique, pretty fun cast of characters, and it was an interesting journey, especially for someone who does like video games. I did enjoy this, so it has, like I said, been a minute since I read this. I don't remember everything about it, but I did give it a 4, and so I would recommend it if you're interested in what I just described it as, you know, video games with a science type thriller. And I don't know, it just, maybe if you also liked One of Us is Lying by Karen McManus, you might like this too, because it's a high school setting. So it is technically a YA, and it is a really shiny book, and I think it is, I thought it was pretty good. And this did come out in January, so it is out now, obviously, because this is March. So I don't know if I'm going to keep my copy just because I'm probably not going to read it again, but I did enjoy it, so there's that one. And then the other 3 books that I ended up reading in January were all audiobooks because I was just not in a, no, that's a lie. 2 of them were audiobooks, one was a library copy. I was really not in the mood to just sit down and read, not gonna lie. I was focusing a lot on my art in January, which has since dwindled down a little bit just because my creativity is non-existent. But the library copy that I read, which was the second book I ended up finishing in January, was The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. Finally, I got my hands on this thriller that everyone was loving, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I definitely think it was Ruth Ware's best work thus far, considering the plot, the storytelling, all of that wrapped up together, but I did not love it as much as everyone else. It was not a 5-star for me. And I ended up reading a large print copy, and I thought that was going to bother me, but it actually didn't bother me that much, which was good. And I did enjoy it, and like I said, I thought that the plot was interesting, and the storytelling was well done. She has increased with storytelling over her books. I think pretty much she's kept getting better over time. But the twist at the end, I didn't like it. I can see why people really liked it, but for me, there's just something about it that was like, oh, okay, cool, that's what happened. And it was fine, and from what I remember, I enjoyed it, but it was not the best thriller. So I am still waiting to see if I ever get a 5-star Ruth Ware, because so far we haven't. Then I buddy read a book with my friend Ariel, which was the second book in the Three Dark Crown series, One Dark Throne by Kendar Blake. And I can't really say much about this because it is the second book in the series, but it did just continue with the plot line from the first book, which focuses on our three main characters. There's some other ones thrown in there, but three queens that pretty much, in order for one of them to be the overall queen of everybody, she has to kill the other two. So we are focusing on pretty much them coming of age to participate in this killing event, and we're just trying to see who's gonna win, pretty much. And I liked the second book. I was at a pretty 3-star average for it, and then by the end it went up to a 4, just because the past two books have really done well with the cliffhanger endings that make you excited for the next book. So that is definitely the thing that I enjoy about those, is that they keep you wanting to read the series, which I think is something, if you are going to read a series, that you need to be able to hook a reader like that. And so I did enjoy it. I gave it 4. I'm excited to read the third one. I'm sure we will buddy read it again because we've been buddy reading the series. I did read this one in audiobook, and I think I prefer the series on audiobook. I really like the audio narration of it. However, my Hoopla has currently been put on hold because the library card that it is attached to is, I need to renew it, but I've moved out of that county, so I'm not sure if I can still have the card. So hopefully I can get that all figured out by the time I read the next book. But yeah, that was also a 4-star. Then the last book that I read in January was also an audiobook, and my first Kristen Hanna. So I read The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna, and oh my goodness, this was so good. I was not expecting to love it as much as I did. I did not give it a full 5 stars, but it's definitely like a 4.75. There were parts about the last 50 pages that I didn't completely love, but the journey throughout and how it was wrapped up and everything was pretty good, and so I really enjoyed it. Her writing style is so atmospheric, and just I could picture myself in Alaska where this book takes place. And so this book takes place, like I said, in Alaska. Our main character, Lenny, and her parents end up moving there and trying to just start fresh because her dad was in the Vietnam War, and so he has some demons from that he is facing. But again, I really loved it. I would totally recommend it. It was my favorite read from that month, and it makes me really excited to read more Kristen Hanna. I do have The Nightingale on my physical TBR, so I'm hoping that this year I will be able to get around to it and read it and hopefully love it just as much. So, alright, now we are moving on to the February books, which means I read 9 books in February, which I'm pretty good with that, actually, because I started out the month a little rough, but gradually it got better, which was good. Sometimes just that mental health can be a roadblock, but I made it through, and we are pressing forward. So the first book that I read in February was, again, an advanced reader copy that I received, and that was Saint X by Alexis Shakin. And unfortunately, I really didn't like this book. I only gave it a 2. And yeah, it was just not that great. It was set out to be a mystery novel, kind of, about our main character's sister who, when they were younger, ended up going missing and being murdered, or died, murdered, whatever. And the biggest problem I had with it, besides the fact that it was boring, was that there was no real wrap-up at all with the book. And that left me really mad. Well, not mad, but disappointed, because we're trying, the whole point of this book is to be what happened to this girl's sister, and that is never resolved, in my opinion. Some people might disagree with that, but I just don't think that it was. and I haven't seen very many good reviews about this. I know Chelsea Darling Reads also gave this a 2. It just really wasn't great, and it was really disappointing. I was really looking forward to liking this, especially because this actually got sent unsolicited to my old address, and so I had to pay to get the package from the post office. So I technically paid for this book, and it wasn't good. So that is a little depressing, but it's fine. So I will not be keeping this one on my shelf, unfortunately, but I'm still thankful for the publishers for sending it my way. Unfortunately, it just was not for me. Then I read the other advanced reader copy that I wanted to get to, and that was You Are Not Alone by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. This is the 3rd advanced copy of one of their books I've received. I have gotten both of their other books in advance, and my favorite is still The Wife Between Us, but this was still a very solid 4-star thriller for me. It was very interesting to feel the kind of paranoia that these 2 authors made in this book, and really feel for our main character, Shay. And so pretty much Shay, our main character, witnesses a suicide, and she kind of gets tangled up in the reasonings behind this and makes friends with this girl that she saw, makes friends with her friends, actually, in a weird way. And so it kind of just revolves around that and the mysteries behind that situation. And so I thought this was really well done. I, again, enjoyed their writing style. That has always been something good for me. But the overall twist, again, for this just was a little not my style. I could appreciate it, but the conclusion of this was just a little fast for me. Like, it was very clear cut and hard, but I really did enjoy the journey and how they portrayed this story, so that was really fun and exciting. So I am, again, thankful for the publishers for sending this my way, because I did enjoy it, would recommend it, and it will fit on my shelves beside these 2 books. So then I ended up participating in Contemporary-thon round 6. I had a TBR of 7 books, but I only got 3, which is fine. Like I said, I've been kind of dealing with my mental health these past couple of months, so the fact that I read any books for Contemporary-thon makes me happy. 3 was good. The first one that I finished for Contemporary-thon was Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng, and I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars as well. I've been landing on a lot of 4s lately, because I've enjoyed books, but they're not, like, blowing me away. I'm trying to be more conscientious about my rating and how I rate books. But this one was a really heartfelt, hard-hitting contemporary about a girl who dies and might have committed suicide, but we're not sure. And pretty much the aftermath of how it affects her family, and also a lot of flashbacks to the times before that and how her life was growing up. This was a very short book, only a little over 200 pages, but it packed a lot into it, and this was my first Celeste Ng book, and it was really well done, and I cannot wait to read her other one, Little Fires Everywhere. I've heard even better things about that one. I definitely would recommend this if you're looking for a hard-hitting book with really great writing style and a great storytelling. This was like historical fiction. This took place around the time where people were racist against Chinese and Japanese people, so our main character was half Chinese, so that did have stuff to do with this. Was it Chinese? Korean? Asian. We'll just go with Asian. I don't want to misrepresent, but it was really it was a really meaningful book, and I really enjoyed the journey despite the fact that it was hard-hitting, and I just thought that it was really well done and a solid 4-star that I think a lot of people would actually probably give a 5-star and really enjoy, so I would definitely recommend this. Then I ended up finally reading a book that has been on my TBR for over 3 years now and has taken me so long to read, but I ended up picking up the audiobook for this one, which made it go by way easier, and that was I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson. And I gave this one, I think, a 3.5 out of 5 stars. It deals a lot with art and sibling relationships, which I really did enjoy, and we find out about an event that happened in their lives that was really crucial to their relationship being torn apart and then brought back together. We follow two twins, Jude and Noah. We are in Noah's perspective in the past and Jude's perspective in the present. The audiobook did a really good job. They had two different narrators, so one for Noah, one for Jude, and that really brought the personality to the characters, and I really did enjoy it as an audiobook. I honestly not sure how much I would have enjoyed it reading it physically, because I was having a really hard time getting into this book's writing style reading it, so I'm glad that I found the audiobook for it and enjoyed it. I think that for a YA contemporary, this was really good, and I'm just not as into YA contemporary as I am adult contemporary, so I think that was another reason why it was a little hard for me to get into it first, but I am glad that I finally read it, and I did enjoy it a little more than average, so I would recommend it if this is more something your style. It has some hard-hitting moments. It has representation of a gay main character, and so it was really, really interesting for what it was, so I'm glad I finally got to it. And then the last one I read for Contemporary-thon was Meet Cute by a variety of authors, so this was an anthology that was about meet cutes, about characters meeting, and I think I gave this one overall a 4. I added up all the ratings and divided them by the stories and got an average, and it was between a 3.5 and a 4. So there were a couple stories in here that I preferred. I will mention those real quick. So yeah, my favorites ended up being Click, Oomph, and The Unlikelihood of Falling in Love were my 3 5-stars in here. I didn't give many under 3 stars, so that was good. And it was really fun to read. I read this on Valentine's Day. I had a fun time with it, and so I'm glad that I picked this up and finally got around to it. I would definitely recommend this if you're into cute little love stories, but also know that these are the beginnings of relationships. There's not going to be any resolve, and it leaves you guessing where the relationship ended up going. But I did enjoy reading it, and I'm glad that I picked it up. And then the last 4 books that I read for the month were for a secret TBR, so I will link that up in the corner so you guys can go hear more about my thoughts for it. But I ended up reading some of the worst books on my Goodreads, which were all thrillers. So I read 4, there were 5, but I DNF'd 1. And so I talk more about them on there, so if you want to hear more of my thoughts, go ahead and check them out. But I will tell you what I rated them and my overall thoughts real quickly. So I read Don't You Cry by Mary Kubica, and I gave this a 2. Mostly I thought it was boring, and it took me a while to read, and the characters really weren't that great, so unfortunately I didn't like this very much. And I'm only going to let myself try one more of her books before I probably stop trying to read them, because it just it didn't work for me. Then I read Into the Water by Paula Hawkins. I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. This is probably my favorite of the ones I read for that video. It took me a while to get used to the perspectives that she uses. She uses a lot of different characters and writing styles to tell the story, but I thought that the plot was interesting and she told it well, and by the end of the book I thought that it was well wrapped up in a good story. It was also pretty fast paced. It wasn't like the best thriller I've ever read, and like I said, the perspectives were a little hard to get used to at first, and some of the characters I didn't really think needed to be in the book, so that's why I gave it a 3.5. Then I read Not That I Could Tell by Jessica Strasser. I gave this a 1 out of 5 stars, so this is the worst book I've read so far this year. Nothing really worked about this. It was pretty much a ripoff of Big Little Lies with a disappearance mystery in there that wasn't good, and it was just a very poorly written book with a poor plot. So overall it just wasn't great, and it took me so long to get through, even though it was not that long of a book. So unfortunately I didn't like it, and I'm not going to be able to get that time back that I spent reading it. And then the last book I read this month was I Know You Know by Jilly McMillan, also for that challenge, and I gave this a 3 to 3.5 as well. I thought that the writing style was really good. I liked the introduction of a podcast with the true crime element in it, and the story was really fast-paced, and up until the very end I was kept guessing and wondering what happened to the main characters in here. This follows a murder of two boys and what actually happened to them. And so I am glad that I read this because I was torn on whether I would like it or not, but it ended up just being more average for me. The ending overall is what really brought it down, and some of the character developments along the way were disappointing to me, so that's why I settled on a 3.5. So there you have it, guys. Those are all the books that I read in January and February. I had a really fun time reading them, and I cannot wait to see what March holds because I have a lot of reading plans for that month as well. If you've read any of these and agree or disagree with my ratings, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to have a discussion, and also let me know what you guys read in January and February. I would love to hear because I like to see everyone's successes in reading. So whether you read one book or 20 or more or whatever, I would love to hear about it. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'm hoping to add more stats into my March wrap up, but this was kind of just a quick film so I could get this up finally for you guys. So let me know if you'd be interested in more stats next time or not, whatever works. But thank you guys again for watching. If you like this video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!